The zombie eye colour and what they represent has been a long-standing debate in Call of Duty Zombies, and still to this day, many people are confused. There has been many videos made over the years, but for the most part they have aged poorly. In this video I aim to provide the most detailed, comprehensive and accurate explanation for what the eye colour means in Call of Duty Zombies. From all the way back in its inception in World at War, to Modern Warfare 3 Zombies and beyond with Gulf War Zombies. This video will of course be tackling Treyarch only, and won't be going into the eye colour of Sledgehammer Games' as well as Infinity Ward's Zombies experiences. From researching for this video, I think it is mainly the red eyes that a lot of people are incorrect on, and we have literal radio evidence that seems to suggest that we have it completely wrong with the red eyes, as well as the orange eyes, which I'll come onto in this video. Since the release of Moon in Call of Duty Black Ops in 2011, Zombies fans became suddenly aware that the eye colour of the zombies in a map was incredibly relevant to the storyline. At the climax of Moon's main quest, Richtofen's grand scheme, Richtofen swaps his soul with that of Samantha Maxis in the MPD, therefore taking control of the Aether itself. At this moment, the eyes of all of the map's zombies shift from yellow to blue. Immediately, followers of the storyline were given a crucial piece of information. Yellow eyes means Samantha is in control, and blue eyes means Richtofen is in control. That was even reaffirmed in Nuketown Zombies, which I did actually detail in depth in a recent video going over some Aether storyline facts, which will be linked in the description and on screen. As the years rolled on, though, it became harder and harder to tell what the eye colour represented, if indeed it was even relevant at all. However, in this video today, I'd like to present you with what I believe to be the most solid theory proposed about what or who exactly the zombies' eye colour represents. While seemingly deceptively simple on the surface, there's a lot more going on. This is a very complex topic and will likely never have an exact answer for it. To that end, we have to make an assumption. The Crusader zombies in Origins originally had blue eyes, however, in the Black Ops 3 version, their eyes are orange. For this theory, we will take that to be a retcon. This is a shame as the blue-eyed Crusader zombies in Origins intro cutscene is very iconic, but Black Ops 3's version makes the issue muddy. And as you'll see, the theory really comes together when we assume them to be orange, the same colour as the other zombies in the map outside of the crazy place, and considering we had a multiverse, we can kind of just ignore those blue eyes as just being one of the prior versions of the cycle. So in terms of the yellow eyes, starting from Nagda-Untoten, we see our first eye colour, yellow. The iconic eye colour was with us in every map of World at War and Black Ops 1 up until Moon when Richtofen took over, like I mentioned before. This is the most common eye colour of zombies. We saw the yellow eyes again briefly in Nuketown Zombies, which like I mentioned before occurs in parallel to Moon. So essentially it's both a prequel and a sequel to Moon since they are happening simultaneously. After that though, we wouldn't see them again for 6 years until the release of Classified. While some people would argue it was present throughout Black Ops 3, we can essentially dismiss this. In both Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4's Chaos Story, the eyes have a distinct orange hue. However, in Classified, obviously also in Black Ops 4, Treyarch made the deliberate choice to create a new eye FX shader, only used in that map. But this was a subtle detail that many people didn't pick up on, and that's why people often refer to them as being yellow eyes in Black Ops 3 when they did have this slight orange tint, which seemed to be intentional to try and differentiate them from the yellow eyes. Despite it being a small effects element, we can all remember how crunched Black Ops 4 was towards the end, having had to be released a month earlier, and with 4 zombies maps at launch, so why would they even bother to create a totally new eye effect that could just be substituted for another? In World at War and Black Ops 1, fans were totally unaware that the eye colour was even relevant. It was only once the Moon main quest was completed that it became clear to the community that it had relevancy. It's clear from all of this that yellow eyes represent Samantha Maxis controlling the zombies when she was within the MPD. With that being said, let's move on to the blue eyes. Possibly the easiest to explain. Like I said, blue eyes represents Richtofen in control of the zombies.
You're getting everything wrong. I told you before, their eyes should be blue.
These were first seen in Moon and then throughout Black Ops 2, excluding Mob of the Dead and Origins. The only point of contention here comes with the end of the buried main quest. If Ludwig Maxis wins, which is the canon ending, Richtofen is forced into the body of a zombie. In-game, we see this as a single blue-eyed zombie, the body of which is one of the stock zombies on the map. Should he be killed, he just respawns.
Help me, Samuel!
Who trusts banks?
Night!
In canon, however, this is a zombified Richtofen with glowing orange eyes. Interestingly, these eyes also have pupils, unlike other zombies. In fact, they are actually still yellow if you zoom in theater mode. This was probably just meant to be an aesthetic thing to let us know that this is Richtofen for us to not get confused in game, and isn't really meant to have any canon importance. All the other times we see undead Richtofen again in the comic books and also the jump scare on Shadows of Evil, his eyes are clearly orange. From this we can assume that is meant to be the canon eye color. As with Sam, it's clear that blue eyes represents Richtofen controlling the zombies via the MPD. Now for the orange eyes, here is where things begin to get complicated. First and foremost, orange eyes appeared in Buried after Ludwig Maxis takes control. However, we see it again in Origins for all of the zombies outside of the crazy place, as once again, Black Ops 3 seems to have retconned the violet eyes of the Crusader zombies in-game. These orange eyes are then extremely prevalent throughout Black Ops 3's seasonal content, as seen in Shadows of Evil, The Giant, Draka, and Zetsubo no Shima. Even more interestingly is that this carries on as the dominant eye color throughout Black Ops Cold War and even Modern Warfare zombies. For further context, in Black Ops 3's mod tools, the Tint 1 Slate 1, which is the eye color, is explicitly orange as seen here. Even more damning evidence is that when exporting the FX element from Black Ops 3, it is called FX Glow Eye Orange, suggesting that yes, Treyarch intentionally made it orange to differentiate from the yellow color when Samantha was in control. I want to theorize here that the orange eyes symbolizes control by the natural forces of the Dark Aether. Let's analyze this in order. In Buried, Maxis takes control using the towers. We can't say for certain how exactly he does this, as he doesn't enter the MPD physically, but it relates to using the towers to manipulate the ethereal energies of Agatha. Furthermore, from the timeline, we are told explicitly that Maxis was severely corrupted by the Dark Aether, to the point where Monty plucked him out of the timeline and erased him from existence, due to the fact that he was only a brain and apparently didn't have a soul, and this is why the Shadow Man was able to manipulate him so easily.
It wasn't really his fault. You know, he hasn't actually got his soul yet. All I got was a brain.
Moving on Origins, while Samantha is normally the demonic announcer in the map, we know this is more of a metatextual element.
My name is Samantha. I'm going to tell you how all this really began.
As we see her and Eddie in the house playing a game retelling the events of Origins. Therefore, we have to look elsewhere for who is in control. We know from the opening cutscene, which sadly wasn't re-rendered for Black Ops 3's retconned Crusaders, that the Crusaders who were still within the mound were unearthed, who then spread the infection to the German soldiers. Again, according to the timeline, the reason for the Apothicans hiding Element 115 on Earth, in particular in northern France, which was the single biggest deposit on the Earth, was in the hopes that humanity would find it and begin using it to wage war, which would in turn open a rift to free the Apothicans. Indeed, in Origins we see a colossal rift in the sky, the likes of which we would begin encountering regularly in Black Ops Cold War. When Origins released, we couldn't say for certain what this giant portal was. Now, we know for certain that it is indeed a colossal Dark Aether rift. Therefore, it's safe to assume that the standard zombies in Origins are controlled by these Dark Aether forces. Even more interestingly, in Shadows of Evil, a radio tells us that the zombie infection here is spread through the spores of the fungus pods that are found growing all around the map during the gameplay.
Hey, Mr. Rapp, just checking in. So, I'm here. Finally. Taking in the sights, sounds, and smells of Morgue City. I know you sent me here to write a piece about the city's bustling nightlife and theater scene, and the characters that inhabit it, but things are getting kind of strange. Even though no one seems to want to talk about it, something is definitely off about this city. Just last week, there was a media shower. A freaking media shower. And everybody acted like it was no big thing. Then, the mold showed up. All over the city. In the dark, damp alleys, there's a strange kind of fungus growing. It looks weird and smells even weirder, but nobody really says anything. Then people started getting sick. At first it just made them delirious, confused. Then they really got sick. It was like they were wasting away. People finally started talking about it. I spoke to one guy in his 80s, a fruit seller, at the local market. He said something similar happened in New England in 1882. When I tried to press him on it, he just lowered his head and ignored me. If you ask me, something definitely ain't right here.
This was vital for the Apothicons as they couldn't physically manifest in the dimension until a rift was opened, which we do by completing the Pack-a-Punch quest on the map. In this way, the zombies must be being steered by natural forces of the Dark Aether, with the fungal spores being the initial point of the Apothicons' influence in the realm. This is very similar to the Dark Aether storyline, where necrotization happens through breathing in Ethereum. Given the Apothicons were trapped in the Dark Aether for millennia, it makes sense that they would learn to adapt these natural processes for their own ends. The same follows for the Giant, Horizondraka, and Zetsubo no Shima. The Apothicons are, by and large, the main antagonist threat in these maps, but not physically present in the original dimension of the Aether, as Origins and Shadows of Evil occur in Dimension 63, not this one. Well, I guess technically, the distant monster Easter egg we assume to be an Apothicon on Zetsubo no Shima, so it seems likely that we know the Keepers were watching us throughout the story as it was unfolding, that the Apothicons similarly were in the background, watching and trying to cause us to fail, to not break the cycle, or wanted us to continue the cycle. As a result, they would have to use the natural influence granted by Element 115, much like in Origins, to spread the corruption of the Dark Aether. But after Zetsubo no Shima, the eye color changes dramatically, and this one will require a bit more theorizing. In Black Ops Cold War and Modern Warfare Zombies, we also see these orange eyes. Now, one may assume that in Cold War, this is contradictory, as we know that Zykov is the Lord of the Dark Aether and the being ultimately in control. This is true, however, he controls such a massive force that, rather than controlling everything directly through his own will, he delegates power, as a commander does with an army. This was all explicitly mentioned in Cold War's intel by Carver specifically. Individuals are turned undead through exposure to Ethereum, falling under the control of the guiding forces of the Dark Aether itself. It just so happens that at the time of Cold War, this was Zykov. For the Red Eyes, probably the most contentious debate in the community. First introduced in Mob of the Dead, the Red Eyes have by far been the most enigmatic. In fact, it wasn't until Black Ops 4 that we really got some decent information to even make a guess about what the Red Eyes meant.
You have made progress, Dr. Lehman.
Yes. Yes. So, as you know, our success with the undead experimentation has been limited.
Yes, we've achieved the same benchmarks as Maxis. But as with his trials, they refuse to obey orders.
That's right. We can't control them. We can't make them docile. But I believe I've cracked it.
I'm listening.
Okay, last month, our man inside the Ascension group sent us copies of Dr. Richtofen's diary. Now, I've been poring over it, following his research, and...
That doesn't seem very docile to me.
Just watch. Stand back, Dr. Schuster. I promise you, it's quite safe. Walk.
Incredible. It's completely subservient. How did you achieve this?
Well, I vaporized element 115, brought it to a gaseous state. The specimen inhaled it.
Inhaled it?
And unfortunately, it had to be done while the specimen was still alive.
While they were still alive? Good heavens, man, did you...
Look, the soldier was going to die anyway. Doctor? Are you all right?
Oh, my apologies, Lehman. I'm distracted by the eyes. They're yellow.
From the very end of this radio in Classified, we hear that Dr. Schuster, Richtofen's closest ally from the Group 935 days, now working for the US government, is surprised to see that the zombies' eyes are yellow. Given this fact, we can assume that, during all of their initial trials at Der Riese, they were a different colour, but we cannot say for sure as to which. Then, in Tag der Toten, we have recordings from Jeb Brown, a blacksmith from Purgatory Point, the town that eventually became buried underground, who would go on to manufacture the Pack-a-Punch machine. You can hear more about that again in that recent video I made going over some facts from the Aether storyline. Jeb Brown encountered a man who, after being exposed to element 115 in the town's mine, had become a zombie and killed Jeb's mother. Specifically, Jeb describes the zombified Clive Farnsworth as having eyes blazing with a red light. This seems to tell us that when there is no control whatsoever over the zombies, and they are not following any particular will or force, they default to red. There is another aspect to this as well. In Mob of the Dead and Blood of the Dead, we see that the zombies are under the control of the Warden. This was uncertain in the original Mob of the Dead, as the Samantha voiceover was used for the power-ups. However, once Blood of the Dead came out, this was changed to be Brutus.
Grant me their souls.
so we can assume that he is in total control of Alcatraz. This makes sense as we know that Alcatraz is a pocket dimension. The same argument is true for Revelations and Tag de Toten. In both instances, either the Shadow Man or Dr. Monty respectively would be pursuing Primis actively, through their own direct control, without the need for any external devices like the MPD or external forces in the case of the Orange Eyes. Therefore, I believe that the Red Eyes also signify the direct control of a single individual. This is further supported by, of all things, Vanguard Zombies, wherein the zombies who are controlled directly by Cortifex or Von List have bright red eyes. Grodd Krovi is somewhat contentious. In terms of date, Zetsubo no Shima occurs before Der Eisendrache, in terms of the timeline of that universe, so the moon is still there, with Grodd Krovi happening after. This could explain the red eyes, as a destroyed moon would mean no MPD, and therefore no connection to the Dark Aether, but this is a bit contradictory. The Black Ops 3 maps all occur in their own fractures, so whether or not the moon's destruction occurred here is uncertain, and probably not even likely. Most likely in Zetsubo no Shima, these events never transpire. After all, there's an endless amount of possibilities in the multiverse, and Primis were dimension hopping. Furthermore, given the ideas established in the previous section about Orange Eyes, the destruction of the MPD shouldn't have had any bearing anyways. There are two explanations here that can work. Either the fracture is so distorted through the actions of Primis in the previous maps that many of the mechanics behind the Aether and the Dark Aether don't even work anymore. For just a small example, in the Grodd Krovi fracture, World War II is essentially endless and technology has progressed at an extremely fast rate, and they have therefore reverted to the default red colour. Or that the Warden or the Shadow Man, having detected Primis when they enter Alcatraz briefly to collect the blood vials, now have a lock on Primis's location and are sending their personal forces of undead after them. Grodd Krovi has always been a thorn in the side of anyone trying to theorise about eye colour, and even the explanations offered for it here aren't airtight. It could also be that Dr. Monty was in control on this map. Of course, he spoke to the characters throughout on the map via the Wisps, and he wanted us to fail, to break the cycle. Them dying on Grodd Krovi would just start another cycle, which would save the whole hassle of having to go to Revelations, and Dr. Monty would just repeat the cycle regardless. And after all, the Shadow Man and Dr. Monty used to be one entity when the Aether was first born, known as the One but split into two. They are two sides of the same worm, so it would make sense that when either or are in control, the eyes are red. So really the Apothecans / the Shadow Man or Dr. Monty / the Keepers could be in control in Grodd Krovi. It really doesn't matter. I assume that regardless of which faction is in control or which individual, Monty or the Shadow Man is in control, both are red. That's why they are red on Revelations, with the Shadow Man controlling them there. Similarly, on Tag de Toten, the red eyes could symbolise Dr. Monty / the Keepers being in control, or the Apothecans, both of which of course didn't want the multiverse to collapse. Of course, the Shadow Man was technically still within the summoning key at this point, and never managed to escape since Grodd Krovi was never able to happen in this broken cycle. However, since he was able to speak to the characters through the summoning key, we can assume that he might have still been able to talk with the Keepers and command them. Either way, the Apothecans would have been working for him. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. And on the prior map, Alpha Omega, we stopped Dr. Monty and thought we were going to head to the Great War. Samantha even says that she will burn the house to the ground.
We're going to fight the war, Eddie. The Great War. Then, we're going back to the house to kill him and burn it all to the ground.
Maybe that just happened off screen and Dr. Monty sent the hordes to come get us. Then again, the Apothecans are also on the map, and the Apothecan blood, which is physically alive. And at the end of Tag de Toten, we know that the Apothecans and Keepers reform back together as the One, like they were at the start of the storyline. From this, for all we know, the zombies on the map could be literally either or potentially even both in control. I don't think it really matters that much. In summary, the Red Eyes of Mob of the Dead and Blood of the Dead we know is the Warden / Brutus that is in control, but the Warden is being controlled by the Shadow Man / the Apothecans, so he's just using the Warden to control them essentially. On Grodd Krovi, it could be Dr. Monty or the Shadow Man, but I'm leaning towards it being the Shadow Man in control, considering it happens after they collect the blood vials from Alcatraz, and it seems very likely that the Warden / the Shadow Man would have then sent hordes to try and stop them afterwards. But it could very well be Monty as well. Revelations is then definitely the Apothecans again, due to the Shadow Man taking control of that realm, Agartha. Aether. Tagdertoten again could be the Keepers or the Apothegons, it doesn't really matter which. Either way, red eyes are probably the same for both. Now for the miscellaneous eye colours. First of all for the white eyes, which were only seen briefly in Alpha Omega and show Purnell's control, aka who would go on to become the Avogadro, who controls the zombies from the nearby APD, which is the American Pyramid device, unlike the Moon Pyramid device. Interestingly, we do get a small glimpse of them in Zetsubou no Shima as well when using the mesmerize function of the Skull of Nan Sapwa, so it's possible that white eyes represents a very localized control, as is the case with both the Skull and with Dr. Purnell, someone in control within the nearby vicinity, only controlling the very close by zombies as opposed to a greater picture. Most likely the APD is just not as powerful as the MPD, and doesn't give total control over the Aether, and we do know the APD only gives a localized area of power, which seems to suggest this is why the eyes are white, as opposed to there being other forces limiting Cornelius Purnell's power. Now for the glowing electrical eyes, these appear a few times in Origins, wherein the Templar zombies who appear to destroy the generators and in the Crazy Place possess them. Given the symbol on their chest, we know that these individuals are members of the Keepers, and therefore their goal is destroying the generators, which opened the rift in the first place. This makes sense. The timeline states that the Crazy Place has some sort of electrical powers that were bestowed to the original Maxis after he ended up there, and so this likely explains their electrical eyes. We did also see electrical eyes on some other maps. Under Eisendrache, zombies become electric zombies when they are shocked by the Panzersoldat's electric cannon, or when you are trying to activate the rocket pad trying to obtain the piece for the Ragnarok DG4. Similarly, on Gorod Krovi, zombies become electric zombies when they are shocked by the Valkyrie drones. In both instances, their eyes then become blue, and most likely this is just to symbolize the element of electricity, and isn't meant to have a deeper meaning to it, because then when we got electric zombies again on Tagdertoten, they still retained the red eyes. Maybe this was just to say don't look into the blue eye color of the electric zombies, this was just for an aesthetic thing, to symbolize the element. Although interestingly on Tagdertoten, there doesn't seem to be a reason for them having the electrical powers. There are both electric zombies as well as napalm zombies, so maybe the reason as to why their eye color is not different to red is because whoever is in control, the Apothegons, the Keepers, or both, on the map physically caused them to have these elemental powers, and so the eye color is still defaulted to red, as opposed to an external device, an actual machine, causing the blue electricity. Either way, it probably doesn't have too much of a deep meaning, and we did see them in the Nightmares mode in Black Ops 3's campaign as well, but again, that's kind of an entirely separate thing. For the green eyes, this is by far the easiest to explain. These are of course the turned zombies. Most likely these represent when the player is in control of the zombie, since they protect you and are friendlies, but they soon after die. Maybe this represents only temporary control that will result in the zombies dying after as a result. On Die Rise, we actually hear the zombie speaking to you, and we find out that they are in endless pain and suffering. Maybe they want to die, and by us making them green, it could be an infection of some sort causing their impending death, and they could be helping us in their last moments as a favor for being euthanized. We also saw green-eyed zombies when zombies overran Verdansk when the Vodianoid ship came. Again, we can probably explain this away though because they were infected by Nova 6 gas, and most likely the green is just corresponding to a similar color as the Nova gas because there were also electric zombies in this instance, and again they were given the blue eyes. So it seems like they were just corresponding to their elemental effects as opposed to it having any greater meaning as to who's in control. We did of course see green eyes in the Nightmares mode as well, but again we can kind of dismiss that since it's such a different thing. We also have glowing pink eyes introduced in Cold War Zombies, and we saw them in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, and these are present when a zombie is being empowered by a disciple and being buffed. So the disciple isn't necessarily controlling these zombies, they are just powering them, as well as taking their health from them so that they're able to survive for longer. Now, I think I have covered all of the eye colors, but let me know in the comment section down below if there's any other miscellaneous ones I've missed. I've covered all of the main ones for sure, but of course there's lots of other side ones, but to be honest, for most of the side ones like the ones I've just mentioned, there isn't really much meaning to them. Now for future predictions. With this information, I believe we can use it to make an important prediction about the future, one that really changes the current discussion about Cold War and Modern Warfare Zombies. In Modern Warfare Zombies, Ava Jansen has a hallucination wherein she sees a horde of orange-eyed zombies Zombies, seemingly accompanied by a blue-eyed zombie weaver, Carver, Gray, and Strauss. Or to be honest, it's more so of a purple color. It's kind of hard to tell because the lighting of the room is red, so these could be blue eyes and are just tinted purple due to the lighting of the room. The event absolutely is not real. However, using the visual language of eye color that Zombies fans are so familiar with, it's possible that Treyarch are trying to tell us something. Currently, it seems like many people believe that our characters from Cold War were somehow killed by Eddie Richtofen, that being related to the machine that Zakea found them in, powering these Ethereum devices, whether Eddie manipulated them into thinking they could save Samantha Maxis, or maybe Samantha Maxis was even responsible for their demise, but it would totally seem like an Eddie thing to do for them to lead them down a trap into thinking they're going to save Samantha, only to then perish, and there is some other agenda with this device that is in Eddie's favor. But perhaps we have it totally wrong, and this cutscene is pointing us towards that. If blue-eyed zombies followed the orders of Eddie, I think this could imply that at some point, the ex-Requiem heads actually reconcile with Eddie, perhaps at the end of Black Ops Gulf War, and mutually recognize that the high concentration of Ethereum in the bodies is a danger to the world. They would then follow Eddie's orders of their own free will, sacrificing themselves and removing the Ethereum from their bodies, killing them, but in order to try and prevent the world from having another outbreak. If this is the case though, where is Eddie now? If they are blue though, could that even be suggesting that Richtofen is in control? Just like he was back in the day, and so he could have been the one responsible in them perishing due to this device. And this could have actually been for his own benefit that we are still yet to see unfold, maybe something to do with Janus. And again, this is just a theory. Maybe alternatively it could be that they were trying to save Samantha, but we won't know for sure until probably a year from now, to the conclusion of Cold War Zombies. We know they did try and save Samantha, and they failed according to Ravenov in Modern Warfare 3. We just don't know if this is one and the same event as why they were attached to these devices underneath Urzikstan, and why they died. These could be two separate instances for all we know, all one and the same, or maybe there's multiple reasons for it. We don't know. That is, if they are blue, of course. They could very well just be purple. And of course, we see the purple eyes with Samantha Maxis having Dark Aether powers, and also Dr. Ava Jansen, who similarly has Dark Aether powers. We also see these purple eyes featured on the Disciple that we're going to be fighting in the upcoming Modern Warfare Zombie story mission. Most likely, this is signifying the entity in control. So the purple eyes could signify when someone has a direct connection with an entity in the Dark Aether, or are an entity themselves. But the purple eye color is something entirely new, so we'll have to delve more into that as the story progresses. It could also mean someone that has a connection with both the regular world and the Dark Aether, considering that is true of both Samantha and Ava Jansen. And if the entity is a split mirror of Ava, the Dark Aether version of her sister essentially, then that would explain the purple colors when it controls the Disciple, and it too is purple. Anyways, let me know all of your thoughts on the theories in the comment section down below. Do you think I'm bang on with most of the eye color explanations I've provided, or do you think I am incorrect? Anyways, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not already for latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.